Hello, cosplay world. This wonderful 6-foot long sword is the first in the 6-part series, actually, 6 parts this week, of a set of armor for Final Fantasy XIV, the Paladin class. Which specific set of armor has been lost to me in time because I made this years ago and only am now getting back to the footage to render it and narrate and all that good stuff. Whew, I make so many things. So we're going to be making the sword next over at finalcosplaycore.com, and all the videos will be there available as well. We're going to be coming back here again for, I believe, another set of weapons, and then go back. It's going to be every other one, as per usual in my big, long armor set tutorials. So, the base for this sword is going to be medium density fiberboard, MDF. It's a nice, sturdy, thick material, not very expensive, easy to cut through. As you can see, I'm using my nice, handy dovetail saw, my hand saw, to cut through this light material. It's also, of course, very sturdy. Now, what you see here is some dowel rods and some PVC pipe. The reason for this is that it is, in fact, 6 feet long, and so it needs to break apart. A lot of cons have a 4-foot rule, meaning that you can only have props up to 4 feet. This is generally so we don't get crazy large props, and they don't set off things like the fire sprinklers and stuff like that. Blocking hallways, all that good stuff. So it's going to break apart into 2 sections, the hilt and the blade itself. And thanks to Final Fantasy's very elaborate designs, there's plenty of spaces to break this sword into pieces. And here you can see that we've attached the hilt, and we have a locking mechanism. Now, because this sword is so heavy, we actually have a double locking mechanism, where 2 pipes make sure that it's aligned correctly. The smaller pipe isn't going to bear as much weight. It's just going to make sure that the blade doesn't shift or change direction when we're waving it around. So we are going to be beveling the edge of this MDF sword with a bit of our planer. I have now a big old sander, which probably would make this a whole lot quicker, but this is a much more precise, more artistic tool. Allows you to get the exact curve you're looking for in this case. So it also gets larger areas, so that's pretty nice for an even curve. The back end is going to be covered in details and various other bits and bobs, so we're not super worried about that right now. We're just worried about getting a nice clean base. Additionally, the MDF is going to be very nice to mount screws into once we start adding all the plastic bits. So here we have PVC foam sheeting. This is plastic sheeting. It's also sold as Sintra as a name brand, and we're going to be cutting this out with our dovetail saw for a lot of the long cuts. But for all the little detail, intricate pieces, we have our wonderful hot knife. And I'm going to skip quite a lot of work with a hot knife, because if you've seen any of my videos, you see me use a hot knife to cut out a lot of plastic, and it's basically the same story. And if you're looking at these little pieces by my hand, you can see that it cuts out quite a lot of fine detail that you wouldn't normally be able to get with other tools. So I'm using this now on a bit of EVA foam. This is going to be our grip. We want a nice cushiony soft grip. We don't want something smooth or hard, so that's less comfortable. We will be using this as a base red because that's the color in which the grip is going to be, and I don't want my paint possibly wearing down or coming up in the corners or something over time. And for, say, yellow or green or some other color that doesn't match our color scheme to pop up. So when I can, I do try to use complementary colors which match. And this sword is just chock full of colors. I could have had an entire video on just cutting out the hilt of the sword, but I think you guys get the gist of how that works with a hot knife, and you can move on with your particular design as well. If you're looking to make an elaborate anime style sword, I highly recommend these material types. And as you can see with the nice clean line, we're able to hide that later on very easily with a bit of quick seal and paint. Makes super easy work of that. So now that we've attached all the pieces, all the detail here with our plastic glue. If you've seen me work, I use a nice, strong chemical plastic glue. We are ready to make this thing work. As you can see, I'm just demonstrating how it attaches and detaches. And there's a nice actual detail along the edge of the sword, which allows us to sneak in underneath and hide it and all that good stuff. Bam, I'm just kind of fighting with it because it is a heavy sword. These screws are going to be hidden by details on top once we start adding those, but we just need at this point to make sure that it functions correctly. What you can do to loosen and tighten the kind of dowel rod PVC pipe grip is to heat up the PVC pipe and wiggle the dowel rod, and as it cools it will shrink, but if you wiggle it, it will be looser, and you can adjust for how much kind of friction you want in your connection piece. I do want it to be very, very snug because this is a very heavy, large sword. I don't need it swinging around and for it to pop out and hurt someone, of course. So wherever we can't get glue, I'm going to be using this goop glue, your E6000, whatever glue you think you have on hand. It's not a huge deal what kind of glue you use in this case because it's plastic to wood. We're gonna put that down for some of the smaller fine details because we can't really hide screws everywhere. I typically like to put screws in places I know I'm going to be layering over with detail. Now additionally, you see I'm working with a bit of Bondo. There are a couple places where the plastic detail is going to transition into the wood main base, and for that I'm going to be blending them in with the Bondo. Additionally, the tip of the sword is very likely going to be banging on the ground regularly, so I want something nice and strong to take those impacts, and that's what the Bondo is for there. So we have our base color in our Delta Red. Remember, Delta is a very strong paint choice when we're working in our warm colors of red, yellow, green. Or sorry, red, orange, green, yellow. Yeah, all those warm colors. And so to keep us from doing multiple layers, I'm going to be using this very high quality Delta Red. Now, one thing you want to be careful of is putting the black down because it will very, very easily overpower, and we don't want that to happen. I want to put down the red, and if I splash a little bit of red where I don't necessarily want it, once I go in with the black later, it will cover that up and it'll be just fine. A lot of the actual detail work, which takes time, is the little edges of the PVC, the plastic overlaying, to make it match it. So I spent a lot of time going in on these edges and making sure that they were crisp and clean where they met each other, and that took so much time. This is actually not that big a deal in comparison to some of the other pieces. Now, what I'm doing with this mix of red is I'm transitioning it and adding a bit more tone. This is kind of like a wash, but it's a very light wash because I want to maintain the strength of the red. I don't want to go in with some heavy black and kind of cover it up too much. I want it to be nice and bright. There's also the trick where we add brighter and brighter colors towards the center and darker and darker colors towards the edges to make those reds, those yellows, those lava kind of feel pop out. And that's kind of what we're trying to do here, is we're trying to bring out the brightness of the red by highlighting the open areas. So next you can see we're going to be working on this shield, and boy, it is much more complicated than the sword you just saw. We're going to be looking at that at finalcosmiccore.com. Hope you guys check it out. Good times to all. Hurrah! Hey, over at finalcosmiccore.com, we have a ton more cosplay awesomeness. You should check it out. Hurrah!